For today's meditation, let us read from 1 Kings chapter 9, verses 1 to 9. As soon as Solomon had finished building the house of the Lord and king's house, and all that Solomon desired to build, the Lord appeared to Solomon a second time, as he had appeared to him at Gibeon. And the Lord said to him, I have heard your prayer and your plea, which you have made before me. I have consecrated this house that you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will be there for all the time. And as for you, if you will walk before me as David your father walked, with integrity of heart and uprightness, doing according to all that I have commanded you and keeping my statutes and my rules, then I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father, saying, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. But if you turn aside from following me, you or your children, and do not keep my commandments and my statutes that I have set before you, but go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land that I have given them, and the house that I have consecrated for my name I will cast out of my sight, and Israel will become a proverb and a byword among all peoples. And this house will become a heap of ruins. Everyone passing by it will be astonished and will hiss, and they will say, why has the Lord done thus to this land and to this house? Then they will say, because they abandoned the Lord, their God, who brought their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods, and worshipped them and served them. Therefore the Lord has brought all this disaster on them. The events in this chapter follows a key moment in King Solomon's reign, coming after nearly 24 years of extensive building projects. Solomon had spent 7 years constructing the temple of the Lord and an additional 13 years building his own house, known as the House of the Forest. The chapter begins by saying, as soon as Solomon had finished building the house of the Lord and the king's house and all that Solomon desired to build, indicating the completion of his grand projects. This moment of completion came after Solomon had invested almost half of his 40-year reign into construction and accomplishing all that he had set his heart on. He spared no effort or resources, whether in manpower or finances, to see his ambitions fulfilled. For many, this would be a time to relax, take it easy, and enjoy the fruits of labor. But it was at this very point that the Lord appeared to Solomon a second time, a significant moment because it came after so much had been achieved. At Solomon's birth, God showed his love by calling him Jedidah, which means beloved of the Lord or friend of God. Now in his love, God comes to speak with him again, not only to affirm his presence, but also to give a sober warning. The first part of God's message is one of reassurance. he heard Solomon's prayer of the temple's dedication, promising to listen to the prayers made in that sacred place. He said his eyes and his heart would be there perpetually. While Solomon had built the temple, only God could truly consecrate it. This illustrates a profound truth. While human effort can accomplish many things, only God can sanctify and make them holy. However, after his assurance, God turns his attention to Solomon's personal life. The conditional promise that followed was very clear. As for you, God said, if you will walk before me as David your father walked, with integrity of heart and uprightness, doing according to all that I have commanded you, then I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever. The continuation of Solomon's reign, and indeed the reign of his descendants, was dependent on his obedience to God's commands. This was no time for Solomon to become complacent. Despite his achievements, God in his love reminded him to walk with integrity and uprightness, just as his father David had done. In a time when Solomon might have been tempted to rest on his laurels, God lovingly called him back to a life of obedience and faithfulness. Yet the promise came with a stark warning as well. God made it clear that if Solomon or his descendants turned away from him, he would correct them. Though God had blessed the temple with his presence, he would not hesitate to cast it out of his sight if the kings of Israel forsook him. Under the old covenant, Israel was to be a testimony to the nations, either through blessing or through discipline. If they obeyed, their prosperity would be a sign of God's hand upon them. But if they disobeyed, their suffering would serve as a warning to the nations, showing that the Lord brings judgment upon those who turn away from him. This warning is also relevant for us today. When we first set out on our journey with God, whether pursuing a calling, a career, or personal ambitions, we tend to lean heavily on him for guidance and strength. But once those goals are achieved, there is a natural tendency to relax. The same pattern is evident in the life of David, who after many successes fell into complacency, leading to one of the greatest disasters of his life. Similarly, Solomon, after reaching great heights, was at risk of losing his focus on God. God, in his mercy, often speaks to us at such times, whether through his word, through others, or through personal conviction. He warns us of the dangers of complacency, reminding us that even after we have accomplished much, we are still vulnerable. Perhaps we have reached a point where our financial security is solid, our children are well settled, and we are free of major burdens. This is precisely when we must be on our guard. It is often at times of peace and success that we are most susceptible to the enemy's deceptions. The history of Israel's kings shows us that many of them started well but fell towards the end of their reigns. The same pattern can repeat in our lives if we are not careful. When everything seems to be going smoothly, it is crucial to pray even more fervently. In his letter to the Colossians, the Apostle Paul commended their faith, love, and hope. But he also mentioned that he continually prayed for them. This serves as a reminder that even when we are in good place spiritually, we must remain vigilant. Satan is more interested in disrupting the lives of those who are active and effective in God's kingdom than those who are already spiritually stagnant. So let us be attentive to the voice of God. Let us open our spiritual ears to his loving exhortation and heed the warnings he gives. Now that God has helped us achieve many things in life, let us be faithful to him until the end. Tragically, Solomon did not fully take this warning to heart, and later in his life he strayed from the Lord. God speaks to us in his love, not only to encourage us, but also to guide us away from danger. Let us remain faithful and obedient, walking in the integrity of heart that God desires, so that we might continue to experience His blessing and avoid the consequences of drifting away from Him. God bless.